Welcome to the Real Estate Show on KMED this Christmas Eve day of 2016. Pete Belcastro with you here today. I'm a real estate broker with John L. Scott in Southern Oregon, and we get together with you once a week here on KMED to talk about all sorts of real estate-related issues and topics through 7.5 years and more than 350 shows. Here we are at the end of 2016, and man, since we started this show in 2009, hasn't this year been the most really dynamic, I think, or just the busiest that we've seen since the Great Recession. That's since before the Great Recession that hit us pretty hard. And we certainly have come back from that's for sure. And well, we'll see what 26-17 brings us, especially with the one creak in that armor is that interest rates, as you know, have risen right around that 4% rate, 4% mark, a little bit higher right in there. So, you know, that changes a little bit of the dynamic out there for a lot of people in buying power and how much you can afford and how much house you might be able to get. Well, today here on the Real Estate Show, by the way, today's show is presented by the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, and our guest who's in the house is Dan Huckins from Visual Home Inspections. And Dan's an instructor for RVAR. You've taught a lot of realtors a lot about inspections and stuff, haven't you? You've been doing this a while.
Commercial and residential classes.
Yeah, you do both those.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dan, first of all, welcome to the show. It's nice to have you here again with us. Every time we get with you, we learn something, as I'm sure our listeners really do appreciate that. Well, just kind of here at the end of this year, what was it like for the world of home inspections? Were you as busy as it seems like everything else was? Or tell us about the year in general for home inspectors.
Insane. It has just been busy. That's all I can say. I mean, back we used to say, most transactions, they usually had a 10-day period, and 10 days, you're lucky if you can get somebody to inspect your home in that period. So I think that's been pushed out to probably 15 days now, and there have been quite a few times this year when 15 days wasn't enough. I mean, we're just juggling stuff, trying to fit everybody in time. It's been very busy.
And where is it all coming from that you're seeing? Just for your experience, because that's what's so cool about all of our guests, that you have the experience out there. So what's the experience? Who are these people? What are you doing with them?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of investors in both commercial property and residential.
Okay.
I think I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the interest rates are still low enough. There's a demand, so obviously the rates, even though they've gone up, seem to still be low enough that I'm hearing from people that they can still invest in a piece of property and rent it out because the rent prices have gone up so much. They can rent it out for enough to make the payment. So a lot of people buying to invest, but it does seem like there are a lot of people moving here. I've seen a lot of commercial activity this year, just maybe not. Some of them, the business is changing, or it's a vacant place and somebody's buying it to start a business or to
buy a current place.
Right.
Okay.
But also a lot of it that's just changing hands. People are selling commercial property and other people are investing in it. So just a lot of activity. Do
you think it's partially because simply the economy has improved enough, Dan, to where the sellers, the owners of those commercial properties say, hey, I've got my money back, I can cash out, I can do something, we've aged, we've done all sorts of things. Is that kind of where this is going sometimes?
It's hard to say, Yeah. I mean, some of it I'm sure is, everybody's, it's all speculation. Nobody knows for sure what's going to happen, but I'm sure that some of the people that are diversified or own different properties and they're moving on, maybe they're investing in something else, so they got to unload some of this stuff, which is an opportunity for somebody else to buy something. So, I mean, from both ends, selling and buying, there just seems to be a lot more activity this year than I've seen in the past.
And that seems to make sense and draw parallel to what we've seen in the rental market and in the residential market too, then, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Residential, still. Well, we're still at that point, for people to buy where, the rent prices, there's such a demand and the rent prices have gone up so much that I think a lot of people are looking at, okay, the interest rates are still low enough, we can still buy something, and a lot of times have a smaller payment than if we're renting.
They were renting, absolutely.
And then it's always if we could find something to rent anyway. And then for the people purchasing, Still, like I say, the prices are still good enough that right now that they could buy something and rent it for enough to make the payment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great time whether you're selling or buying. There's just a lot going on.
Well, it's the seller's market, isn't it? We tell people right now, there's no question, just because the inventory is so low. I think at our office meeting this week, we were basically going through the stats, and $350,000 and less for a price, and like it's sold out. I mean, the available inventory think about that, $350,000 and below, that they're basically, the inventory isn't there.
It's gone.
And that bodes not very well because that's the price range, obviously, that's the most of us can afford,
sure,
and are going to be able to get into. The upper ranges, of course, you have a lot more inventory out there than you do.
Who would have thought we'd get to that point where we're having bidding wars, and people paying more than the asking price?
Yeah, and I had an agent tell me that we were talking about different things like that. It's the most I've ever heard is 17 offers on a place.
Wow.
And I've even seen them where there were HUD homes, there were foreclosed properties that had some of those, and there were so many offers, they just simply, we're going to take them all off the market, raise the price by $10,000 and put it out again, things like that. That's how crazy that part of it is, which is, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's reality in terms of the market. In terms of okay, let's go back to home inspection, because this is what, to me, a home inspection. The last time you were here, you gave us, and our listeners, I thought, a really good piece of advice, Dan. And that was, if you got any questions about it, maybe you should go get a pre-home inspection if you're going to get ready to sell a home, especially if you've lived there a long time, and it's going to, because everything is going to show up on a home inspection, right?
Oh, well, a home inspection is a snapshot in time. So, I mean, we have people ask us sometimes, so you're going to find absolutely everything that's wrong, right? Well, I can guarantee you I'm not going to find everything that's wrong. I'm going to do my best to find it. But absolutely, especially under a house. I mean, people are, kind of aware of their house, but when you're going to sell it, I mean, a lot of things happen over time slowly that you don't notice. Yeah. And a fresh set of eyes coming in can catch a lot of those things that you didn't notice. So most people really think their home is better than it is. I'm not saying everybody's home is bad, but they just think it's better than it is because they're not aware. Who goes under the house? Nobody.
Who goes in the crawl space?
Right.
Who goes up in the attic?
Right.
Have you been up there in the last 20 years or something?
Right. And finding those things out ahead of time. I mean, I had a very big inspection this summer that almost went south. The house was absolutely gorgeous, but because of the condition of the things under the house, the buyer was
reluctant.
Right. He started questioning all of the remodel that was done, everything else and stuff, and was walking away. They ended up resolving it and getting that cleaned up under there.
And when you say under the house, tell me what some of those things might be under the house.
Oh, just standing water or water issues, insulation that's pulled down, undermining of the foundation, electrical wiring that's not adequately protected, uninsulated plumbing. Okay. So there's a lot of things that go on under there. And if somebody had just what I call grunt work, just basically somebody getting in there, doesn't have to be a $80 an hour professional, but somebody needs to get under there and just clean up the wood scraps, make things better under there. A lot of those things could be, that are big red flags, could be taken care of before you put it on the market very easily.
What about animals? You see a lot of animals under houses and things like that, or is that an issue?
A lot of dead ones.
A lot of dead
I don't know why it is, between cats and possums and rodents and, for some reason, cats like to, whether that's where they go to die or find a nice, cool, dark place or whether they're trapped under there because somebody didn't know they were under there. But, so it is real important to block off any openings because a lot of the damage we see to insulation and everything else
is caused by a lot of animals getting under the house. And that could be like those barriers or those screens just come loose.
Sure.
And you can get under there.
It doesn't take a very big hole for rodents to get in, but amazingly, it doesn't take a very big hole for raccoons to get in either. And raccoons just do an incredible,
Yeah, I think raccoons. Yes, I think one of the most interesting stories I heard was from a realtor who said that they had an inspection in the house. Underneath the house, there was evidence that a cougar had lived there. Was staying at the house at some point. They don't know how long ago that might have been, but they knew that from just what was there that there was a cougar at one point.
Oh, sure.
Living under the house. So you never know about those things.
I have a friend who's an inspector down in the Tahoe area, and he always has to periodically chase a bear out from underneath the house. Vacation homes, and the bears will hibernate under there, and so they'll stomp around in the house and loud music, and the bear will wander off to the edge of the yard until they're done with the inspection, and then back under the house.
Because you're going to see those things. We're talking with Dan Huckins from Visual Home Inspections today on the Real Estate Show on this Christmas Eve day, and hope you're having a good day getting all your shopping done as we talk a little real estate here today and home inspections and commercial inspections. Well, we were at the bottom of the house, and that you can clean that out yourself almost, or just make sure that's okay. Let's go to the top of the house, because it seems to me that if I'm crazy here, but roofs are a big problem, or can be. Tell me what the story of roofs here.
Water is the blessing and the scourge of everything. Yep. So you want to keep water out, so the entire building envelope. But the thing with a roof is, a lot of times from the ground, when you're looking up at your shingles, they might look just fine.
Yeah.
You're not looking right straight down on them to see the wear on the granules or cracking. Sometimes premature failure, sometimes from wind flapping them over. You're not outside at that time, so you don't know that's happening. So you really need to be able to get up on the roof, or have somebody get up on the roof, or some way to see it from up there. Because a lot of times roofs look much better from the ground than they do.
Well, I'm sure they do. What are some of the issues that you see that people should be aware of regarding the maintenance of a roof? I mean, you say, I've heard people say, I put a 50-year roof on this place, or I put a 40-year roof on this place.
Well, those are, excuse me, those are, the warranty on a roof, when they say a 50-year roof and things like that on a lot of those, you got to consider a lot of that's marketing. I mean, they're very seldom do roofs actually, unless it's metal or tile or something like that, but asphalt shingles, I very seldom see them last as long as they're supposed to. The warranty would be so prorated down by the end, by that end, that it wouldn't be worth that much anyway.
So when I hear people say 50-year roof, that really take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
What about a 40-year? 40-year too?
The thing is that in the life of that roof, people are going to be getting up there at the wrong time. They're going to be getting up there in the summer, which is when it's really hot, and that's hard on the granules and stuff. They're going to be getting up there to clean moss off or rake leaves off. So there's a lot of wear and tear that takes place that you can't really plan for. And so it's just a matter of doing those things at the right time and in the right way.
All right, tell me the right time, because you just mentioned that. I never heard you say that before. So tell me what that means.
Well, you don't want to get up there when it's frosty.
No, I don't want to do that. No.
And you don't want to get up there when the roof is really hot, because when those shingles get soft, just walking on them, your feet, if you're not walking flat-footed and walking the right way, you can be damaging the shingles. Sure,
okay.
It's that hot.
So if it's wet, I mean, is it better to go on it? If I'm going to go up there and clean my gutters or something like that, is it better then to do that?
It's better to not go up there if you don't know for sure. It's not a safe place, so you need to do things the right way. I mean, we were trained that the first thing you do when you climb up on a roof is immediately go straight up to the ridge, stop, stand there, look around, because people step off of roofs. People, I mean, there's a lot of things the right way to do it. But you want to go up there when it's not too hot, it's not too cold, a little bit of wetness. It depends. If it's a metal roof, just don't do it.
What about moss? Because we get a lot of moss on roofs in the Rogue Valley.
Yeah.
Should I have it removed, or when I see it coming, or what do you think about that?
Moss is pretty detrimental. I mean, it'll shorten the life of the roof, the shingles and stuff. So it should be removed. And there's different products that can kill the moss. A lot of people will wait till summer when it dries up, and a lot of times you can just take a push broom and literally
they'll brush it off the roof.
Come off real easy. So it's just a matter of, but you do want to get the moss off of there. Shingles, other things we look for are multiple layers,
Multiple, just roof over roof over roof kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. And sometimes people will think they're, saving money, or they probably are saving money. But
by not tearing the old off, right? You just put a new roof over the old roof.
Sure, but some of the things that happen there is you've added, if anybody's gone to a big box store and picked up a bundle of shingles and see how heavy that is, and realize that it takes 3 of those to cover in 1 square, which is 10 feet by 10 feet. You've added an incredible amount of weight
to the roof.
And you've destroyed the warranty on the new ones you just put on.
Because of you didn't take the old one off, so the warranty on the new one isn't any good.
Right. Most manufacturers require you to go right down to the sheathing.
You see, that's why you're here, Dan, because you know all these things. You know that? I did not know that. That's interesting to hear. We're with Dan Huckins today on the Real Estate Show. He's an instructor with Rogue Valley Association of Realtors and Visual Home Inspections. We got a lot more to share. We're back after this. The Real Estate Show rolls on here on KMED, Christmas Eve day of 2016. Hope your holiday is going to be a terrific one and do something fun and your family, and all the great things and great giving that people have done throughout the Rogue Valley is absolutely one of the most heartwarming things, one of the neat things that we do, isn't it? Is think about each other this time of the year. Here on the Real Estate Show today, still a lot of activity going on, even though the holidays are here. It'll be really interesting to see what the final yearly stats are going to be from the SOMLS at the end of this year, and see what 2016 actually ended up. Because as you know, statistics always tell the truth. You can't refute them, and so we'll see exactly what took place here in 2016. An awful lot certainly did. Today here on the show, Dan Huckins, who's from Visual Home Inspections, is in the Real Estate Show with us. He's an instructor also with the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, who's sponsoring today's show. And it's good to have Dan here. One of the things that we talk in home inspections we have a lot of older clients. We have a lot of baby boomers like, well, you and I guess, we're in that category. I certainly am. And, we've lived in places for years. I mean, I've lived in mine for, almost 25 years. I can't even believe that. And other people have lived, I have clients who've lived in places 40, 50 years, Dan. And when it comes time to sell, we got to go through inspections. And I know sometimes that is so hard for older clients to kind of get through, isn't it?
Well, it is. And a lot of times, typically what I will see a lot of times, an elderly couple that has lived there for 50 years. And I just know that house is probably going to be immaculate. Our parents' generations and stuff, they painted it every 3 years, whether it needed it or not. We wait until it looks like it needs to be painted. Yeah. So they just took care of things differently. And we had better wood, and, a lot of different things took place. But what we see is sometimes where the person who took care of that maintenance passes on, and whoever's left behind, the house then at that point starts suffering from a few years of deferred maintenance and things like that.
Do you see a deferred maintenance as a big problem out there? As you just overall, do you see a lot of that? Is that the real problem that we're facing overall in home insptions?
Yeah,
it's just haven't done it.
It's everything. Yeah, I mean, we have to do things to. I'll explain to people when I'm walking around their house and I see vegetation growing next to the house, and I can't see the foundation and things like that. And I tell people, we're lazy by nature. I mean, if we clear the vegetation away to where when we're just walking around the house, we can see the foundation, we can see if there's pest activity, we can see things going on. We will notice that. But if we have to push our way through bushes to take a look, we're never going to look. So a person needs to make it easy for them to notice things and stuff, because everybody's busy.
And even if once that happens, say you're now alone, your spouse is gone, what can someone do at that point? Say they want to live in my house for a few more years or 5 years or, whatever my age is or something, my health before I would have to move or something. What should they kind of do at that point?
Well, then it becomes even more important to, find that handyman or that neighbor or somebody, who can at least at least once a year or something in the summer, walk around the house, take a look at some things, just to, or have an inspector, I mean, a lot of inspectors, we have all different levels of inspection, but most inspectors will just do a consultation or just a walk around where they could, go around and point out the obvious stuff even. So if a person doesn't have somebody to do that, they really should find somebody because, it's going to deteriorate,
all right.
whether you're doing anything or not. So,
and when you go around the house, okay, what are you looking for that maybe that we should think about as we go around? Saying, and I love the idea of the handyman. There's lots of guys around, and I assume some gals too, who do that kind of work, and you want to get somebody who's licensed and bonded. I mean, I really believe that. So, but what are the things that you're going to look for that in my house I want to make sure is working if I'm going to do something like this, like sell it?
Well, when I'm walking around a house, I mean, we're obviously looking again, moisture.
Moisture, water.
Any place where there's gaps and cracks or penetrations where a pipe goes through the wall or the cable, places around windows, any missing paint. I mean, maybe it doesn't always look perfect if you touch it up, but it's going to preserve it until you can paint the whole thing or make it look better. So, I mean, a little bit of the wrong color is better than exposed wood. Whatever you can do, but you don't want exposed wood. You don't want gaps and cracks where moisture can get in. You want to keep your gutters clean so they're not overflowing and running down the wall.
Gutters are really important, yes.
Sure.
Keep those flowing.
Sure.
And connected with your downspouts. You want to have those things connected.
You want to make sure there's no gutter or downspout leaks. You want to make sure that your downspouts are directed, to where or they've got a splash thing down there, something to direct that water away from the foundation. You don't want all that water just dumping right next to your foundation. It kind of defeats the purpose of having the gutters.
I was always amazed at how much water actually falls on a roof.
Oh, absolutely.
We were out a big 2,000-gallon holding tank when a client had, and water would come off the roof into the tank. First rainstorm filled that tank. I could not believe that much water came off a roof.
Well, absolutely. If you figure the square footage of your house and the surface area of your roof is a little bit more than that because it's peaked.
Tilted, yeah.
So, but even if you had 1,000 square foot house, let's say, and the weather said, yeah, we got a half-inch of rain last night. Well, take a half inch times 1,000 square feet and figure out how many cubic feet of water that is. That's a lot of water that came down.
It's amazing how much you actually see. What about inside the house? What should everything be working? I mean, should all the outlets, the lights, the water faucets, tell me what should be working that an inspector is going to say that passes versus you're going to have to fix this?
Everything.
Everything should be working. Okay,
I had an agent this morning ask me as I'm walking around, I'm looking at everything. She says, what all are you looking at? I said, everything. I mean, that's what we do. We want the faucets to work right. People a lot of times have a lot of stuff shoved under their sinks. Every once in a while, they should pull it out, see if you've got a leak, see if something's happening under there. So we're looking for that, caulking around the sinks and stuff to where water can't get in and damage the countertops. We're looking for loose outlets or worn outlets.
Okay.
If you've got those plugs that every time you plug something in, the plug falls right back out, replace that outlet. I mean, that's one of the main causes of electrical fires is arcing, loose connections.
At my house, I've changed a lot of light fixtures out. Put kind of new ones in, those kind of things. Sure. But you can get an electrician come in and do. I guess the point being, there are people out there, and they don't really. I don't think they charge. I mean, they're not charge you to do it, but it's certainly you got to do these things right to keep the house working right.
Absolutely, and electrical stuff, always have somebody who's trained in that to do that work for you. Unless you're knowledgeable and skilled in doing that. But there are things that a person can do, just little electrical testers you can buy for $7 or something, just to walk around every once in a while and stick them in all your outlets. See if they're working okay. See if, if it says it's got a bad ground, then, something's worn out, something's come loose, something's wrong. So there's little things like that a person can do themselves because it's no different than plugging something into an outlet.
Yeah. Tell me your experience with decks, outside decks. around the valley generally. Tell me what that's like.
Decks are always a big thing. Over the years, we've seen more and more deck collapses. And what people think of when they think of a deck collapsing is they always think of it, falling down from out the furthest part away from the house. What usually happens is the deck comes unattached from the house and collapses in on the house.
Collapses in, okay.
And that's why,
we actually see that, though, really.
Yeah, we never used to, use lag bolts and stuff. We just nail it on there. And nails have a very good shear strength, but they bend, so you get a bunch of people out there on the end of the deck. It starts pulling away, and then it collapses in. So lag bolts are always important.
Boy, look at that. Now, decks 40 years ago didn't have that. So you got to remember that, too, because the inspector, he's going to find everything, I think. I don't care what you say. You do a pretty good job of that, Dan. I'll tell you that. The Real Estate Show continues with Dan Huckins here from Visual Home Inspections. Show presented today by the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. We're coming right back to KMED. Real Estate Show continues here on Christmas Eve day of 2016. Pete Belcastro with you here today. Don't forget, you can check out any of our past shows at realestateshowOregon.com online. We invite you to do that. Have some terrific shows on there that give you a good idea of what the real estate industry has been doing around Jackson and Josephine County recently, and hope you'll go there and check that out. We'd love to have you do that. Hope you're having a safe and wonderful Christmas holiday. And of course, next week here on the show, we'll be talking about Airbnbs in the Rogue Valley. Can you make some money maybe on your home that you haven't thought about? Maybe you have an extra room. Maybe you have an additional dwelling unit that's empty. We'll see. That'll be a terrific show next week for New Year's Eve. We'll talk about Airbnb and vacation rentals, what's going on in the Rogue Valley. And like I say, you're going to be really, really surprised by that. Today here on the show, Dan Huckins from Visual Home Inspections is here. Today's show presented by the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors. Dan's an instructor with RFR as well. So he's out there every day with home inspections, both commercial and residential. And before we took that last break, I got to go back to the deck thing again, because I know, National Association of Realtors stats show that decks or outdoor living space is like the number one thing that people are wanting today, in homes, above, higher end homes that have that ability. And decks are interesting. Tell me the difference between Trex and wood and this. Do you see differences and you go out and inspect these kind of things? Oop, I'm sorry. Oop, there you go.
Okay. Yeah. Different types of materials. Wood has structurally, you can span a greater area with it, greater distance with it. So a lot of times, if a person is, say, replacing the wood and wanting to go to Trex or something like that, they may have to add some additional support because the spacing may not be right for, and we'll see that sometimes. I've actually seen decks where people put Trex or some other material like that on there, and it's just kind of sagging between the joists, because there's too much of a span. So you got to make sure you're doing it right and the right span and everything for that material. Also, a lot of those materials, came about because initially maybe they were cheaper or than going with wood or something like that. But then there've also been recalls, and I see deterioration on those materials too. So it doesn't really matter what you go with. There's going to be a good likelihood of deterioration.
Then the question is there, Dan, if you were building a deck, wood or Trex, what would you do?
I would go wood.
Wood. Okay. Yeah. I think people say that. Yeah.
It's going to be cheaper to do. Really. I mean, sure, if a person's going with a real fancy deck and all redwood and all everything else, your costs get up there and stuff. But just depends on the deck and depends on the application. But I like wood. I always have. And, you know what wood's going to do.
You do, and that's absolutely true. Tell me about plumbing. I remember it wasn't that long ago where, as realtors, there used to be, it's still there, was a polybutylene plumbing addendum that if you found that, you had, people had to disclose that. Then everything went to copper, I think, and now even that's changed to, another cheaper, like Trex substitute almost. So what's PEX? What's the story with that people should be aware of?
Well, PEX is a great material. It was used in Europe for a long time before it ever made it over here, but we've been using it for a long time. Most new construction is using PEX. It's cross-linked polyethylene, and it's got a lot of neat characteristics to it, but there's with every material, there's pros and cons. It's easier to work with than, say, copper. It's faster, it's cheaper, so there's a lot of benefits on that end. There have been some recalls on different PEX materials and fittings. One of the things we're seeing with PEX is rodents apparently like to chew through it, and it's pretty easy for them to chew through. So
if you have that kind of plumbing, if your new house almost under your house, your crawl space, you better keep the critters out, or they can chew through the water lines, and you wouldn't even know it.
Absolutely. Well, you'd know it eventually.
Right. Eventually you would, because standing water may be under the house or whatever. Yeah. Water's coming out from under. That's interesting, isn't that?
I still personally think, if a person can afford to go copper is a great way to go. And rodents can't chew through that.
They can't through it. Before we get out of here, and time always goes away from us, you're also telling me that you're seeing a lot of crossover inspections, which is like homes being converted to businesses. Is that right? Or vice? I guess it would be that way. Yes.
Yeah. We see, a lot of businesses, a lot of old homes, because as residential areas, I think, move out, and some of the areas that were more residential are becoming more business, and so some of them old homes are being used.
Do you look at it differently in an inspection at that kind of thing, or tell me what the difference would be that you would do there?
You really have to. A home is a home. Basically, when we're inspecting a home, we're looking at the same things, the same features and stuff. A commercial property, it depends entirely on what the use is going to be. Are they going to take this home and make it into a restaurant? Are they going to make it into offices? Are they going to make it in, So, it can change a lot. So it's really important to find out what the intended use is going to be, so that you can kind of tailor the commercial inspection to that type of thing. And it's very important to make it a real commercial inspection, or somebody that's been trained for commercial. There's a lot of things where, even though it may be a house, let's say they were going to make it into a restaurant, or it's a house that has been converted into a restaurant, and things like that. Well, there's things that would seem obvious maybe to a knowledgeable commercial inspector that may not to somebody else. You may not realize that little waffle iron costs $700 when you're, or the blender was $7,000 and stuff. So there's a lot of difference between commercial equipment, residential equipment. There are considerations such as ADA, for handicapped people and stuff, and depending on if it's just going to be an office, or if you're going to have a restaurant where people are coming in. Yeah,
because each one would require a different set of rules, doesn't it?
Sure. How are your restrooms? Are your restrooms ADA, located to where, or in a way that they can be remodeled in? I've inspected places where a person wanted to put a restaurant in, and it was a concrete block building, let's say, and just there was really no economical way to make those bathrooms ADA compliant. So, there's a lot of other stuff to know, and a lot of considerations. You may have a room that was just a spare bedroom where they just stored things in for 20 years, and now it's going to be these persons, all their servers and computers are going to go in there. So you have an entirely different electrical load.
Yeah, you need a few more plug-ins at that room kind of thing. It's very interesting. Well, commercial inspections are very detailed, and you have to do a whole lot. Well, they both are. They both contain a great deal of information for really both the buyer and the seller in all the cases, because you certainly want to share that with them, with what's going on. This is important, isn't it? You got to do that.
Yep.
Well, look, we're out of time, Dan. So Dan Huckins, you can look him up, Google him, Dan Huckins, Visual Home Inspections. Thank you for coming by. You have a terrific Christmas and Happy New Year, and we'll see if you're as busy next year when we talk to you in 2017 as you were this year.
Thank you. You too.
Good luck to you, Dan. Thanks for being here. That'll do it for the Real Estate Show here on Christmas Eve. Have a great holiday, everybody. For Joe Brett, I'm Pete Belcastro. We'll talk to you next Saturday, and God bless you all.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Show on KMED Radio, presented by the Rogue Valley Association of Realtors, along with John L. Scott Real Estate of Southern Oregon and Bank 34 Mortgage. For guest contact information, download our free app, or to watch a past show, visit us online at realestateshoworegon.com. This show is produced by Table Rock Productions. Join us again next weekend for Southern Oregon's one and only Real Estate Show on KMED. And thank you for making the Real Estate Show part of your weekend.